Welcome to the show, Chris Graham and Rod Mullins. We're going to talk some NASCAR here on a Wednesday. And Rod, we're going to start with the guy who, only by the grace of God, got into the round of eight playoff field, Joey Logano. And because of an inspection issue for another racer, Logano's in the field of eight, and then he wins in Las Vegas. He's now in the championship four. Wow, what a whirlwind for Joey Logano and his team.
Yeah, it's been a whirlwind the last 2 weeks for Joey Logano and Team Penske. First being on the outside looking in, not sure if they were going to, they from the way it looked, they weren't going to make the playoffs whatsoever. And then the post inspection on Alex Bowman sent him to 38th. It put Logano into the playoffs. And then with that luck, he follows it up with some great pit strategy from Paul Wolf and also some fuel mileage too that kind of helped along the way. And he ends up winning Las Vegas, and it was a great win for that crew and stuff. He's won or been in the championship four, I should say, been in the championship four. It seems like every other year, it seems like. I mean, it was 2014, 2016, 2018. It's about every other year, almost 2 years in a span. And so now he's back, and we're going to see what he's capable of doing this time around. And he's a lock already into the championship four.
And you talked about the great strategy. It's just bad luck for Christopher Bell on the other side of that, dominating the race, but only able to come in second because of, I mean, the great strategy executed by Joey Logano and his team.
Yeah, and he screamed. He was screaming because he was so frustrated at the end of the race as he crossed the start finish line. And Joey Logano only beat him by tenths of a second. Hundredths of a second is what he beat him by. And despite leading 155 laps, he said in an interview with NASCAR.com after the race, it's funny because after the race, I was just completely dejected, he said. Then Adam Stevens, his crew chief, he was feeling pretty optimistic about it. That's kind of a change. You've got a crew chief that at least is showing some optimism there at that situation. And then he goes and he says, well, fast forward to yesterday. Monday is always our debrief day, which we're talking on Wednesday now. And I was feeling pretty upbeat and ready to move on. And then he was feeling pretty dejected. So we're definitely on different timelines here. So Christopher Bell, I think the surprising thing was that he dominated like he did. You thought he was going to win the race and then ends up getting beat there at the very end. And, this is a team that's also in some transition too. Joe Gibbs Racing, of course, Christopher Bell is going to make has already made the championship, the round of eight. He's looking to make it to the championship four. But here's the big news coming out of Joe Gibbs Racing this past week. Ty Gibbs is going to be listed as the owner of the 54 car starting next year. So that's going to kind of be separate and away from Joe Gibbs Racing. So he's going to be an independent, so to speak. He's going to be driving his own car next year.
And talking about how dominant his car was, even finishing second place. You
Hmm.
noted in your story, Rod, that Bell pitted 35 laps after Logano, left him 30 seconds behind. He closed it down to at the start finish line, he was 0.662 seconds behind. So he made up nearly a 30-second gap in those last 35 laps.
Yeah, he did. And Joey Logano was just, he couldn't believe what happened. He was telling everybody, I'm so blessed out of it. But, turn around and Christopher Bell said, I still can't process how it all ended. I just can't figure it out because he said, we did everything right today, but it just wasn't meant to be. And he just ruled it and said it was a bummer losing that race. And I can agree with him. I mean, you do everything right, everything looks good, things look like they're going to be in your favor, and then you end up losing the race by that much of a margin. But it couldn't have gotten any worse for Bell, except what it did for, of all people, Ryan Blaney. Chase Elliott. They finished 32nd and 33rd, and they had some frustrations really taking place. A big rollover crash involving Tyler Reddick on lap 90. It collected Brad Keselowski as well. So there were three cars right there, and then one contender out of the race. It's in there for the Championship 8 series here that we've got, trying to make it to the Championship 4. So a lot of big things happened on Sunday at Las Vegas.
William Byron was third. Alex Bowman, we've mentioned, who was left on the outside looking in because of that inspection issue. He was fourth in this one. And so now Logano is locked into the championship four. We got two races left in this round. If one of the playoff eight were to win, they would punch their ticket to the championship four. Otherwise, they're all jockeying for a position around top finishes. Man, how do you see this playing out? Who's hot right now?
Well, Joey Logano's who's hot. Right now, the odds makers, he has completely flipped the playoff picture, so to speak. What was, looking like it was going to be a very slim picking for him to get in there and get into the playoffs, suddenly just turned around dramatically. It's almost like taking the Poseidon ship, in the Poseidon adventure and turning it back up while it's still filled with water. That's how much of against the odds sort of thing that happened. He was able to pull that off, and that could very well change his season right there altogether. I mean, forget about Denny Hamlin. Forget about some of these guys right now that are trying to get that momentum restored again and trying to get back into it. We talk about Denny Hamlin a lot on here. He's minus 27 now, below the cut line. And, if that happens here in the next couple of races, that's going to be another missed opportunity for that race team with Joe Gibbs Racing and Denny Hamlin's team missing out on the playoffs, coming this close and then missing out by just, a few points and so forth. But, Joey Logano's the one that's kind of on fire right now. I also have to give Christopher Bell some credit in there. He's starting to build as he did last year when he got into the championship four and he got there, but then ended up getting knocked out of it at the final race. But, it's still early to tell what's going to happen with everything. We go this coming week. We've got a race that's going to be taking place Homestead. They're going to be in Miami, and then they go to Martinsville, and then they go to Phoenix. And by the way, folks, if you're keeping count, Kyle Busch is still winless, and his streak looks to be going to be broken probably here by the end of the season, unless some miracle takes place here in the next couple of weeks.
He was running so well there at the end of the regular season. Almost a couple of times worked his way into the playoffs with a surprise win. So we'll see if he can get that magic back. Hey, let's talk about penalties from this race. The first one you mentioned to me when we were chatting ahead of time, Eric Jones. So take us through the teams that were penalized.
Eric Jones lost a wheel. That was kind of surprising to me. You would think that after a while, these guys would be already so set in being able to know the routine as the way things were on the track. But Eric Jones, they didn't go and they didn't get that center lug or that centerpiece in there secure. He ends up losing a wheel, and he was penalized for the loss of that wheel during the race. And then also in the Xfinity Series, let's look here and see. I've got it up in front of me. Cole Custer, in post-race inspection, he had an infraction where lug nuts were not properly installed. His crew chief was fined $5,000. Jeb Burton, also lug nuts not properly installed, and his crew chief was fined $5,000. And Matt DiBenedetto, his crew chief, Kevin Johnson, fined $5,000 for lug nuts not properly installed. Now, let me also tell you, too, the way that infraction for the number 43 car goes like this: loss or separation of an improperly installed tire or wheel from the vehicle during the event. And so with that happening, crew members John Rosselli and Kellen Mills have been suspended for the next two NASCAR Cup Series Championship points events. Not like it was going to really matter much to Eric Jones, but that's the way it goes. They'll be suspended through Martinsville November 3rd, 2024, with the opportunity to come back at Phoenix.
Let's talk some off the track news. Actually, a blast from the past. The only winner this weekend, it wasn't just Joey Logano who picked up a NASCAR win this weekend. Bobby Allison, tell us this story.
Well, Bobby Allison, he has been one of the most prolific winners on the circuit. Of course, the Alabama gang, everybody knows him for being a part of that with his brother Donnie, and also son Davey, and all the others that came out of Alabama racing. But back at Bowman Gray Stadium, August 6th, 1971, um, he did not get an official trophy or the official win granted by NASCAR. So here's the quote: "For 53 years, the Myers Brothers Memorial was the only race run by NASCAR that did not have an official winner." Now, that's what they say here, according to Jim France, who's the NASCAR chairman CEO. As they begin preparations for the upcoming clash at Bowman Gray Stadium, the topic of August 6, 1971 returned to the forefront. So they felt it was time and the right thing to do to officially recognize Bobby's win and honor him as an 85-time NASCAR Cup Series winner. And they are grateful for Bobby's lifetime contributions to the sport. Mike Helton visited with Bobby Allison a little bit later and told him, he said, the race was one of 6 that season that featured a mix. This is where it's at: the Grand National Cup Series cars and the smaller Grand American cars. Allison, who competed in both series at the time, chose to drive his Grand American Ford Mustang. He won the race, leading 138 out of 200 laps. But despite being presented the trophy in victory lane, the win never counted toward Allison's Cup Series total. So with that, he now trails fellow NASCAR Hall of Famer Richard Petty, who has 200, David Pearson with 105, and Jeff Gordon with 93. So they award him a win finally after all this time.
53 years. I'm 52 years old, so that's been a
Yep.
while.
Yep.
And one other bit of news off the track about this news is about a driver that will be debuting in the NASCAR Truck Series next year. And if you're a fan of Malcolm in the Middle, you might remember him.
Frankie Muniz. He's been a Toyota driver, street series driver, I think. They have this celebrity NASCAR, or not NASCAR, but celebrity Toyota challenge where they race sometimes on the streets out in California, or they will race occasionally. Frankie Muniz had the racing bug bite him so much that he got into racing and moved up to the ARCA series. Raced pretty well in the ARCA series, did pretty good there, and then decided he was going to try to make the move over to the truck series and maybe dabble a little bit with some of the Xfinity series. It came to pass for him, probably more than anything else, that he had to pull out. He pulled out of the series probably, I would say, going back about halfway this past season. And he said, I've got to take a stop and I've got to take a check on my mental health and find out where I'm at with this. I'm pushing myself so far. The expectations are there too much for me. I don't know really what I'm supposed to be doing. And so he takes a step away from racing, and now we get the news that it came out I guess just yesterday or maybe today that he has signed with Ream Brothers Racing. He's going back into the Truck Series for 2025. So it's good to see him back. I know he has wrestled with a lot of this mental health, these mental health issues, but it's good to finally see him back into racing. I'd love to see him before it's over with make a big step into the Cup Series and come away with a couple of wins.
You know, it's interesting to see a guy like this. He's 38 years old, so kind of older to be really. I know he's not starting his career, but starting at this level really with a full-time ride for the first time. But I read an article, an interview with him where he talked about this is what he thinks about. He said when he's not in a car, he's thinking about being in a car, and when he's been ever since he was 18 years old, this is what he's wanted to do. So he's been chasing this for 20 years.
Yeah.
And you know, the doggedness there is something to be admired, that a guy is willing to chase it this far when he could just rest on his laurels and, you know, take acting roles and make a lot of money doing that. He's chasing something he's really dreamed about doing, and now he's finally, you know, getting a breakthrough here.
Yeah, and we look at this and we think, okay, Frankie Muniz, 38, he's racing, he's doing what he loves, but yet on the flip side of this, you've got somebody young and upcoming, and Hallie Deegan, who has now bypassed NASCAR. She has left NASCAR and she's going into the IndyCar series. I believe it's going to be the NXT series, is what she's going into. But she was quoted as saying about her move going into the IndyCar series. She said, NASCAR is it's just this beast is what it is. It consumes you. It kind of just, tears you to shreds and things. And I don't know if she had really super high hopes going into her racing career with NASCAR, but she did not, display her abilities while she was on the track. I know she had a couple of some top 10, top 20 finishes, but the wins were never there. She even demonstrated some of her ability about driving in that Tony Stewart superstar racing experience. And, people were like, why isn't she winning races? But this goes back to the same thing, too. What kind of race program is underneath that driver when they get in and strap into the seat week after week? Are they somebody that's on top of things, or are they at the main bottom struggling and clawing and scratching? The same thing could be said right now about Richard Childress Racing. You go and you wheel out money to get Kyle Busch into this program. You have your grandson and Richard Childress's grandson, Austin Dillon, who has been running the 3 car for such a long time. And then this year, it's like everything just comes apart at the seams. Then they come alive about midway through the season and they start really laying on some good races. And you think, man, he's got a chance. He might be able to make it into the playoffs. But as we go into these final 3 races of the season, he still is without a win. They're struggling. They're still trying to figure out what is wrong with this team. And they're probably going to look at it this year and then try to make notes and try to prepare for it and try to prevent this stuff from happening next year.
So, for our viewers out there on YouTube, people listening on the podcast, Rod's wrap up of the race in Vegas, Joey Logano's win, is on AugustaFreePress.com. It's also on Dickinson Media as well, so you can look for that. And we will all be looking forward, Rod, to your coverage of Homestead this weekend, and then we'll look forward, you and I, getting back together next week to talk about it all. So, in the meantime, as always, Rod, thank you for your time and your insight.
Sounds like a date. We'll see you then.